it's this big black thing. That's the foam bat. It's so famous for the Boeing sound on the metal door. So, advanced. So what I'm going to talk about is the timeline, which starts out way before Amiga. This concept of a microkernel was new back then. If you are familiar with older computers, 64, Commodore 64, and Atari, and all those other machines, they didn't really have a concept of operating system. Yeah? More? Louder? Is that better? Okay, I'm getting a signal to be louder. All right. I'll do it like a rock and roll here and hold it by the throat. All right. So microkernel is a new concept, and that was something that came over to Amiga through my background, and I'll be mentioning how that happened. And then, there was a point where I left Amiga and went off and worked for the enemy. I went and worked for Apple, and it was cool because they had so much money compared to Commodore. And then came back to Amiga and did a few projects, and there's history there. I'll go through in detail. Let's see how long it takes this. Yep, like this. Oh, there it is. So long ago. So I've done this full arc now in my life, and it's funny how your life is like a river, where you get caught in these streams that carry you different places. And long before Amiga, I worked in television, and I worked my way up, through all the different parts of being a cameraman, a loader, a technical director, and finally directing 6 o'clock news when I was still very young. And I came to a fork in my life. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go on and get involved in technology or film. So that was my choice at a young age. Which direction do I go? I love them both. So I went off to a university, it's right up the street here, Davis, and enrolled in the double E program at Davis. And that was the same time computers coming along, and they had a computer science specialty for your double E degree, which was a really cool addition. And one of the professors that taught the operating system course at UC Davis was a guest lecturer from Hewlett-Packard, Cupertino. And so I took his course, and he came up to me, at the end of the quarter and said, "Hey, you're really good at this operating system stuff. We'd like to, interview you for a job at HP." So I did that interview. I passed and ended up at HP Cupertino down in San Diego, which is now the Flying Saucer. They mowed all those buildings down. It was really nice. Buildings got bulldozed. So I ended up on the OS kernel team, which were the people designing the 3000, HP 3000 kernel. They decided to merge the HP 2000 team and create something called HPE, which stood for Hewlett Packard Executive, which was the kernel of the operating system. And it was at a time when there was a lot being written about making a smaller operating system. Back then, operating systems were large projects, very large. And they kept all these paper listings in a cabinet that would take that entire wall over there. That was paper listings for the source code to their operating systems. So I introduced this idea that I've been reading about in some of the journals, microkernel, and making a real small microkernel is message-based, and it could be multi-processor based too. And it could be even network-based, where messages would transfer between different kernels, right? So I presented this paper at Pajaro Dunes back in, I guess it's like 82, I suppose. And actually it's 81, I think. And they didn't like it. And I was really surprised because it was a really good idea. It made operating system code a lot easier to maintain. And to build and maintain. It made the whole structure cleaner. So I kind of was like crushed by that rejection of my white paper, and I took off to the South Pole with HP's blessing. They said, "Sir, take an academic leave of absence and let us know when you get back." So that's what I did. I did physics experiments down at South Pole, upper atmospheric electrical stuff. So ionosphere, those kinds of things. There's something called a cusp down there. And the cusp has all these, particles that come spiraling down the cusp, and that's studied heavily. It's a very interesting part of the atmosphere. So when I came back, I went over to HP, and they said, "Hey, we'd like you to come back here." And I was interviewing other places too. And they said, "If you come here, you can do whatever you want." And thought, well, that's a nice offer. You know, 'cause HP back then was different than what you know HP as, you know, today or even in the last 20 years. HP was the best engineering company in the history of the world. Yeah, there's no HP person over here who agrees with me. No, Dale, yes, Dale from HP also. I'd forgotten. And they were amazing. And every engineer wanted to work for HP because they were so good to you. And they had like lab stock, like the size of this room, imagine that all being parts. And when you interview, they say, those parts are yours. You can build whatever you want with that stuff. It doesn't have to be for work, it can be for home, it can be for hobby, it can be for your friends, whatever you want to do, that's your stuff. And that's one of the reasons I went to work there, because I just love that offer. I returned to HP with the idea that I could do whatever I want. I found a guy that was up at Stanford who was making this little box called the Sun Workstation. His name was Andy Bechtolsheim. And I said, hey, that's exactly what I want, that little bitmap, you know, type box. And he lent me one, and I couldn't believe it. So there's 2 prototypes he had, just barely working, and he lends me one. I take it back to HP. He has a manual for it that's 3 pages long, okay? That's the API, 3 pages. I got a couple other guys, you know, in my division to help create fonts, you know, icons. There's a little 3-button mouse. Dale knows the mouse really well because it was an optical mouse that he later marketed, and Windows. And we got this thing working pretty well. So it was full, you know, body GUI. So we were kind of inventing the whole GUI style of computing, and we could not convince anyone at HP to build this box. We went all the way up to the top of HP. The president of HP, we gave him a demo, and he said, yeah, HP should make something like this. But then to get that to propagate back down to, you know, managers and sort of the middle of the company was really tough. And what they ended up doing is they started a whole new division that was called the PC division, and they put us in that division. Well, the entire team quit because we didn't want to make PCs, we wanted to make, you know, bitmap workstations. So, again, rejected, got married to, picked the most beautiful woman in the Bay Area, and I married her, and that was the beginning of that. So we went off on our honeymoon. And when we came back, a good friend of mine, who was the best man in my wedding, had interviewed at this place called Amiga Computer. And he said, Carl, you should go interview at Amiga Computer, because you would like what they're trying to do. And you know, they're going to make custom silicon to help support this idea of bitmaps. They're going to have, you know, Blitter and copper and all this other stuff. So I said, but you should go interview for the manager of operating system position. So I went down there, and Bob Pariseau interviewed me. We talked for probably 2 hours. He said, when can you start? And I said, tomorrow. I'll start right away. This sounds so cool, doing this. It's funny, because I met Jay early on, but Dave Morris, who was the president of Amiga, he was off on a trip, so I actually never met him. They hired me anyway. So got to know, you know, all the hardware guys fairly well, and then the software team was just coming together. You're waiting for like Dale to wrap up what he was doing at HP, and Sam Dicker, I think, or RJ, I think, was still working at Valley or whatever that company was that he was working for.
When did you join?
83, August of 83.
August 83.
August 83. I was employee number 28. Yeah, yeah. So this is the environment we worked in. You know, I called it the cave. It was just one room, no windows, dark, really crowded, and we all jammed in there, and we really didn't mind because we all believed in this dream of what Amiga could become. You know, personal computing back then really wasn't a thing. There were home computers, so Commodore dominated home computing. Okay, this is before we merged with Commodore. Okay, we're just a separate little company. And but there was Atari, and of course, you know, Jay Miner came from Atari, one of the inventors of Atari chips, so he came from there. And then, you know, we all got started, and it was just, you know, totally from scratch. It was like there was nothing to start with other than just our imagination and how we built this. And one of the things I want to point out is there's a wall that you see back there. So you're lucky that this office that we rented had whiteboards on all the walls, so we could do things. And in that wall, we ended up putting a diagram of what happens when you press a key on the keyboard to when it shows up on the screen. And that's the entire process, the data and code flow that happens on a multitasking machine that has device drivers for the keyboard, device drivers for the display, and all, graphics library for the display, all that kind of stuff. So it starts up here. You can barely see it. There's a finger pressing a key, and it comes down through here. And what you see in this section here, this is the I/O system of the Amiga kernel. So this is, do I/O, send I/O, perform I/O, all those I/O functions that then pass the key along to where it then gets rendered, fonts get rendered, and then put up on the screen. So that was done by Kodiak and I. So Kodiak's Bob Burns. He's not here though, right?
No, I don't think so.
Did he come? Okay. So great guy, amazing guy. Did the fonts, printer, all that stuff. A lot of things for the Amiga. Oh, so why did it say don't turn off that light, Dale?
What's that?
Well, it's funny. So I took all these pictures originally. These are all my own photos. I don't know if Dale's even seen this. It says do not turn off on that light back there. And that's right by your desk. You're just sitting to the right of that. I have no idea why it said that.
Was it pointing in front of my monitor?
No, it's just pointing against the wall. Maybe so when the lights got turned off, we didn't all fall over each other. That's all I can think
That's
of.
what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
It's like when they put it on stage, right?
You can flip the switch, just walk into the room like, hey, what the hell happened?
That's right. Yeah, you're sitting right in front of that, aren't you? Your desk is right in front of that. Yeah. That's probably the reason.
I mean, since you're the keyboard guy.
Yeah, so it's Mike Slickjack, by the way, who's in those photos also. He's labeled Mike, and he's here. We got Dale, we got Mike, we got me. Is there anyone else that was in that room?
Yeah, Ron, you were in the room.
In that room?
RJ signed up, but he's not here. So, okay. Ron was in the hardware lab, so he went down the hall. So I'm not doing the hardware lab, that's a whole nother talk by someone. So there's the rest of the team, right there. The rest of the software
Can you flip
team.
that back once?
Yeah.
Let's see if we check one thing.
Oh yeah, you want to see the names of these people? You know the names of all these people, Dale? Okay, so Sam Dicker, we got Sam over here. This here's Sam Dicker, Bob Caraso, VP of Software. You got Robert, Bob Burns, who's Kodiak. We call him Kodiak. There's so many. Cheryl Gibbons, Cheryl Knowles. She did the the hand that holds up for the disc. She's the artist for that. Debbie Minardi, Aaron Michael. That's RJ's wife. There's me, Dale. Who's that between us? Is that Neil Pigman? That's not Neil Pigman, is it?
Where's that?
Between the two of us.
Neil's not that tall.
Neil's not that tall, is he? Yeah. I don't think Neil's in this picture. Yeah. Do you remember who?
That's Barry, and then Bart.
This is Bart. Okay.
That's Barry.
Barry.
His first name is Barry.
Barry.
There's
Bart. This is like the president.
There's Jack. Jack Hager.
Yeah, Jack Hager, yeah, for sure. He's the other artist that did a lot of the great art for me, a lot of posters and things too. And
Who's the guy standing next to Bob Burns?
over here?
The other side.
Oh, yeah, right here.
Terry, is that Terry?
Terry Sheeta. No, Terry Sheeta? Could be.
Okay.
But no, I don't know what his name is.
Who, the tall guy here?
No, it's the Terry.
Oh, I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I recognize her.
She was in documentation.
So the team was dynamic, it was changing all the time. Not everybody's on this picture, but
Yeah, this was taken at a point when I knew I was leaving. Okay, I got the whole company together. I got my camera on a tripod, and I took these pictures. It was,
it was late '85 then, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of mid-85.
Yeah, because I left in March '85, so I wouldn't be there.
Oh, you weren't in there? Okay.
No.
Yeah, mid-85, yeah. I thought I should at least take a picture of the company. And I took all the other pictures too of the company. at that
Point in time,
That point in time, yeah. So the Amiga exec was unusual for its time. Every other home computer just had ROMs. You entered into the ROM through, address, 3000. You go and that would put a character on the screen or whatever. So Amiga was quite unique and it used libraries for all of that. The whole design, I was very object-oriented kind of guy. I knew we couldn't use an object-oriented language on this. The only one that was really around was a serious one was actually Smalltalk, which was really confused with it. This is before C++ and all that happened. And so I took this idea of taking this really small kernel idea, which is the concept of a node, right? And letting you link these nodes together in doubly linked lists. I did that first for just messages, and then I realized, oh, now that I've got that, why don't I use that for linking up libraries and keeping lists of libraries? Let's do it for devices. Let's even do it for interrupts. We keep lists of interrupts that way. And they all have a name, right? They all have a name field, so it makes debugging really easily if you say, show me all libraries, or show me all the devices, or show me all the interrupts. And they're also prioritized at a priority number in there, so you could, like for interrupts, you may want to have one priority, at a higher level to handle the interrupt before other things. So that all came together really well. It had a signaling, which was a super lightweight signaling mechanism, bit-based signaling mechanism. It also had this IPC layer through the messages. So you could do both. So a message could then trigger a signal, and that's how things work. It's self-configured on boot, and that was a necessity because all of us were working at different parts of the project in the room. So Dale will be down in his corner doing graphics, and I think he actually one of the first libraries was the graphics library that got put into the structure. And Sam was working on audio, RJ working on other things, and then you throw it into the ROM and try to boot it, right? And everything changed size and all that kind of stuff. So rather than hard code that, I actually had exec scan. It scans through memory and it looks for a signature. And if he finds that signature, it then says, this might be a library or a device, and then it adds it to the list. So it did that automatically, which was really super good. And then it was very fast and low overhead. And that was necessary because we had game developers that wanted to use this for games. And I thought, if it's slow at all, they're going to blow away the whole operating system. They'll just go right to the hardware. They'll ignore everything. It'll be incompatible. And so it's got to be like zero overhead to convince game programmers to use it. And so that was a tough one, but I think we accomplished it pretty well because almost all the games are friendly.
And they still work today.
And they still work today, which is amazing. Yeah. So, and that's a date. You might be able to find this out there. These are the dates that everything happened. So this is when I started working on it. Was in September of '83, and then the first CES was just a hacked up version, and it was table based. The original version of exec was table based, and then I took all that out and put in lists, and then went to another CES, and it's kind of development of it as things went along. And that just sort of structure. That's a slide I used for the second developer conference. So one of the funny things about multitasking is everyone knows what it is today. Back then they didn't. Back then no one understood multitasking unless you're a computer science guy or you worked in some computer company or whatever. And I would tell people, oh yeah, we're making this multitasking. This is going to be a multitasking machine. And I got a lot of different reactions. The first one was, what is multitasking? And it wasn't a word like it is today. It wasn't like anyone saying, oh, I multitask. They don't even know where it came from. That word didn't exist in the vernacular. So, and then it was like, well, why do I want it? My dad even. He was like, hey, he had a PC. Why do I want multitasking? I just turn it off, turn it back on, put another floppy disk and go switch on. And so it was like, oh, you don't need it. The game, of course, game machines, you don't multitasking game machines at all, do you? But this one you sure did. And of course, home computers don't even need that kind of thing. So, and then it's even possible. I got, 256K. You're really going to do multitasking, and in fact, you were. So that changed things. So now, this thing happened along the way where we hired a company called WSM Group out of Tucson. And they were responsible for writing the file system. And they liked the design of the Unix file system, which I thought, was a decent file system. So, and the API as well, right? And so they decided that they were going to go that route. We sent the machinery, we went and visited them a couple times, and not much was happening. They would give us a little bit of code, barely worked, and it was looking pretty dismal that we actually have a file system. So management got worried that we weren't going to make our release date without a decent file system running, which it wasn't. What no one knows about is that Neil Caton, who just finished the disk driver, And this driver was really slick for the Amiga because he actually used the blitter to be able to encode the disk, decode the disk, use the blitter. Right? And also used the DMA channel to get it into memory. So it was a really slick piece of code. So both of us went to Dave Morris and sat down and said, hey Dave, we're willing to take a month, lock ourselves in a room, and Sidney didn't know this, and just make it happen, just write it, a decent file system for the Amiga. And he's like, no, we're going to find something else. We can't spare you guys to do that. And it's a management decision. It wasn't, I don't think, the best decision. So one day, this guy Tim King shows up, and he's sitting at Amiga, and it's like, hey, what are you doing here? He says, well, I've got a file system that runs on Amiga. I was like, oh really? How did that happen? Where did you get the API? Where did you get the Amiga to try it? Well, secretly, somebody in management, I'm not even sure who, sent this off to him, and he got it running. And so I'm like, okay, if it's going to run on Amiga, it has to work with exec. Okay, because exec is the base. Everything's written on exec. The basis for everything needs to run on the kernel, which was a challenge because for a number of reasons. One is they wrote it all on BCPL, which is the predecessor of the C language. Okay, and it's a really kind of weird language. It has a different way of addressing. So it does 32-bit word addressing. It doesn't do byte addressing, which is what the Amiga did, byte addressing. So that meant that you had to convert pointers. Anytime you point it into an Amiga code or point it back out of Amiga code, back into the file system code, you had to convert your pointers, which was really unfriendly. I mean, you use macro to do it, but still it's unfriendly. And if you did it wrong, you crashed. That was the big problem. The other thing that, so what happened is I actually went and took Tim King over to Saratoga. We locked ourselves in a room over there, and I said, you have got to change your API. It's way too ugly looking. He had something, the open function was called something like initialize input handler or something, and initialize output handler. Those are the names for the open function, right? And I said, let's just use the words that like Unix uses for opening a file. It's called open, and he agreed, which I was happy about. So we basically renamed all of his APIs to make that more friendly. But then he insisted that we needed to cache the floppy. It was a debatable subject, right? So for performance, you want to cache. But the problem with that is if it's in memory, you pop the floppy out, it's not on the disk. And for a consumer machine, that was a mistake. Because most consumers are not going to watch the light on the front of the floppy, they're just going to reach over and pop that floppy out. And that caused massive grief for everyone that used Amigas. And it was very embarrassing to me because people were like, oh, I destroyed my disk, what can I do? I was like, oh, this is going to be tough to recover. So, so that was one of the other big downsides. So, project moving along, we released it in Lincoln Center. It was like this wonderful, elegant event. Everyone was there dressed up. RJ and I were like, oh, we've done it. And so that went well. That was a great event, and Commodore treated us really well with that. And then here's the whole team. So it wasn't just us in software. It really took, and that's a pretty amazingly small team when you think about what we created. So my last job was at Roku. The team was 10 times that size. So it was really quite an accomplishment for its time. Everyone was just so fully dedicated to making that product. So I'm done. I'm thinking, what are we going to do next? Well, I wanted management to do. So Dale gets a copper, and Dale gets a blitter. He gets all these DMA channels and
all
everything.
the fun stuff.
He got all the fun stuff, and I'm like, I don't get anything. I got the 68,000, right? I want to have two 68,000.
Math library.
I want to have two processors. I don't know if Dale remembers this, but I was constantly talking about the transputer. Transputer just come out and it's like, oh, see, this can communicate really well between multiple CPUs. And I tell Dale, we're going to make the transputer the next, CPU for the Amiga, next Amiga. So I went to management and pitched that idea, rejected. It's like, they were too busy, and I understand this, they were too busy just trying to get the product out, just trying to get sold, just trying to get manufactured. All the details that go into making and putting a machine on the market were all happening.
Who rejected it?
You want to know who? Martin Chagulski. Yeah. So Martin said no, and I argued. I came back many times because I said, you know, I don't have anything else to do. I don't see any reason to stick around. I think I may able to take off, and I did. And I didn't have anywhere to go. I wasn't like another job. I just like quit it. Okay, I'm done. You guys are going nowhere if you don't like step up to the next machine. So I was trying to push Commodore and push the Amiga team to do the next thing, which later happened with Commodore Westchester. They made a lot of great stuff. So things happened. I got this call. Cindy picks up the phone. She says, "Hey, there's a secretary on the line. Irving Gould wants to talk to you." Now, I know who Irving Gould was. He was the chairman of the board of Commodore, and he's one of the founders of Commodore. And he was out in New York, and very, very wealthy guy. Important to pick up his call, so I did. He says, "You got to come back." I was like, "Well, no, I'm not coming back." He's like, "No, you got to come back. Here, talk to Henry Rubin." Henry Rubin was his technical translator that would translate for him anything technical into what Irving could understand. And so I won't go through the whole conversation, but it comes down to Irving then says, "Hey, give me your bank account number. Tell me how much money you want to see in your bank account. What do you want deposited in the bank account?" So I'm like, what could I say? I mean, can I say $1 million? This is quite the offering to do this. And I was stupid, and I should have done it because I think I could have, maybe fixed some of the things that were wrong with the DOS. But yeah, I resisted. I said no. I didn't have another job. It wasn't like I was making money somewhere else. I just felt like it was beyond me. So
your wife was supporting you.
My wife was supporting me. She was working at HP, so I guess there was a job on account. She was an engineering manager. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, honey. Yeah, makes it look a little bit easier. Yeah. So Sam Zicker had this great project going on at Apple Advanced Technology Group, and they recruited me there. And in the meantime, I met with Bryce and Nesbitt, who had taken over exec, and we did this like mind meld thing, And we went in a separate room at a conference, and we spent 3 hours just mind melding. And he was the perfect guy to take over exec. I was so happy that Commodore hired him because I felt it was in great hands. I wasn't going to get destroyed by somebody who didn't understand, critical sections or any of that stuff. So that was the same time that I eventually moved out. My first son was born. Our first son was born. We decided to get out of the kind of the racket down there in Silicon Valley, moved up to Mendocino County, bought some property, built a house, and the phone rings again. It's Irving, and he says, "Hey, we're trying to sell Amiga into Canada, and they require the logo programming language. So we don't have a logo programming language, so we can't sell it Amiga into Canadian schools." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well." I had been working with a guy to do this Amiga logo thing. It had flopped. He was in Las Vegas and he had a lot of problems with the company and never happened. So I sat down and took about probably less than a year and created Amiga logo. And this, if you never used this, it was a really great product. I wrote the manual as well as the software, and I wanted it to work really well because that's what the kids would be learning. So I wanted to be able to do a lot of color, sound, all this stuff. Great product, and so that was helpful for that. And I also wanted to get out more information about how the Amiga kernel worked, and so I wrote this little book. And I was going to do several of these issues. This is number 1, Guru Meditation number 1, and I was going to do like 8 of them. So I went and printed them myself. Here they are. If you want one, you can have one. I've got a whole box here of these. If you know who Pat Brulé is, he calls this the best book ever written on embedded computing. And he's the guy that did the toaster firmware.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy is rock and roll, and he loves his book. And it is actually good. It took me a long time to write this book, but it's fun and it's Amiga specific. You know, Ralph Babel actually came out with a book that was equally basically his guru book, where he went into everything. This one just goes into the kind of the kernel primary, you know, cascading, interrupt handling, all that kind of stuff. So I got that. Let's see here. So I should say one thing. This is like a commercial break. I've come to a lot of these shows. Not a ton of them. But I've come to a lot of these shows, and I've got so much Amiga stuff that's ancient. Okay, so I'm going to take a little break here and say, hey, I've got this is like an original T-shirt from Amiga.
I'll take it.
You want it? Yeah, sure, it's yours. All right, so that's what we're doing here. Okay, who can guess what this is? If you can guess what this is? Sinistar, that guy over there. Dale, good guess. So Sinistar was the game that RJ built and wrote. And Sam Dicker before coming to Amiga. And we'd all go play it. We were big fans of Sinistar. It was a great game too. Let's see if anyone can guess what this isn't an Amiga thing, but it's still pretty cool. What year did this happen? See who's paying attention to my presentation.
You went to South Pole.
81.
Yeah, what year?
81.
181.
81.
81. Yeah, it's probably your kid size. Yeah.
I might fit it.
Mike, we need to talk.
Okay, here's a real interesting tough one. This is detailed history of Amiga. If you know what this is, you know Amiga really well.
Oh, wow. What is that? What's the story?
So what's the story? Name the person who made this Revolt. What was the name? Glenn.
I bought some from him.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Did you get the T-shirt?
He brought them to the last Amiga 40 gear.
You brought the T-shirt?
No, he brought the
Revolt. Yeah, Revolt is a pretty cool product. Ahead of its time. Should have been a huge success. I guess it wasn't, but at least you got a T-shirt out of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
What about this one? Anyone know this one?
Death of
What year?
Death Week, or when the contract was signed?
87.
87.
It says on
That's easy. Okay. All right. Here's one of the toughest ones. You have to know CDTV to know this one. So I'm willing to actually take almost any. Who created this T-shirt?
81.
So Pink Floyd. Anyone recognize that name?
Yeah.
So what was the Pink Floyd guy that was involved with Amiga? No.
one of the band members.
One of the band members. He had the studio for recording.
David Gilmour.
No, it's getting closer.
Nick Mason.
Scotty Page. Scotty Page was a sax player, and he ran the Pink Floyd studio down in Los Angeles. Anyone want it? Who wants it? Who has it? Oh, you already got one. Okay, over there. Okay, so that's Scotty Page. Walt Tucker. He started a company called Walt Tucker because Walt Disney, and then he saw that Tucker movie, you know, about the car, the Tucker car. So he named his company Walt Tucker, and he had this massive, wonderful compound in the middle of Los Angeles where, you know, he recorded bands. And a huge mixing board like half the size of this room here. Let me continue with the show and more giveaways at the end. I'm not sure how am I doing on time. Oh, it's a lot of time. Can I explain that? Yeah. So what happens is I go to the 1989 Developers Conference in San Francisco. I run into this guy, Don Gilbert, who tracks me down and said, hey, we want to make a CD-ROM based Amiga. And I'm like, really? That's a great idea because I think, you know, CD-ROMs are just becoming a thing. Massive storage compared to what you put on a floppy disk. So you put endless number of games on your Amiga. And I thought, well, this is a really good idea. Who's going to drive it? Because you got all Westchester, you know, they're the ones in charge. And he said, well, you and I will fly out and visit Irving again. So I go out and talk to Irving, and Irving says, basically, Commodore started as a home computer kind of company. And it's kind of gone off and it's like a tool now, and yeah, Germany is more successful as a home computer, but I want success in the United States, again, as a home computer, so I want to make it something more you put in the living room. And we said, okay, that's good, and Don was totally in on that. Don Gilbert was the hardware side of it. He was the one that orchestrated going out to all these Japanese companies and getting them to contribute something. Whether it was the front panel, you know, all of these were done by different companies. The remote control of the front panel. The CD-ROM is still new. It's from Mitsubishi, and they had some bugs in it and stuff. And then Gail Wellington kind of ran the whole software developer side of it, you know, recruiting Amiga apps to put their app on to CDTV. So I headed that up, and I know there's been like a movie or something, or a show. Someone put together a TV thing about, I think, CDTV. They called me about it, and I gave a little bit of information. But what I'd forgotten is I've got like 3 boxes, legal boxes in the basement, with every single document that has to do with CDTV, including hiring people, firing people, schedules. I found this. It was incredible that I could find this. Because when he called me, I didn't have a whole lot to say. I don't really participate much in these, sort of retrospective. Here it is. This is my calendar from when I was working on CDTV. So it has like every meeting and every kind of decision that was made on CDTV. I kept the log of it because I was actually getting paid for it. So I kept track of every single thing that happened, and so that made it good. You know, I'm going to do that TV show again. I've got this to go off with much better. Plus 2 or 3 boxes of contracts and faxes. So back then you faxed everything, right? Where's that remote? All right. So that project went really well from the developer standpoint. We were up against, what would they call that?
Philips Interactive?
Philips, yeah. And what do they call that? CDI. They spent $2 billion, billion with a B, developing CDI. We developed this for, I don't know, 10 million or something like that, for the original development effort. That's not manufacturing, it's developing it. And it was better in a lot of ways, because it had the Amiga. And it had all those 10,000 games that you could play on Amiga that you could pretty much put on this thing. You had to figure out what to do that easily. So then, that ended, the product was out. I thought it was going to be like massively successful. I thought this was going to be a good thing. So I wrote this authoring language to do demos and did a lot of demos and things. I created this, I actually patented this thing, CDXL, which was basically scattered read from CD-ROM. So because the Amiga had DMA for so much, and because you could cut up your DMA into different parts of memory, when you read it in, you could have video, audio, code or text, and it could go into different parts of memory. And so you give the list, and you'd say, okay, I want you to read from the CD, scatter read it into these different spots. So it's super efficient at doing that. And one of the problems that was, I don't know if you used a CDTV ever, but it would like grind away on that CD, and then you put in a CD and it'd be like, okay, when's it gonna come up? 2 or 3 minutes later, it's like, And it would drive me nuts because anything that I created for it instantly came up. So I thought, what are these developers doing wrong? Well, what they're doing is they're using their, floppy disk file system style for all of their data, and they're putting it just on the CD-ROM like that. It's scattered all over the CD-ROM. So it's having to move the laser around everywhere to pick off these different parts of these files, which is totally the wrong thing to do. You want to put them all next to each other, so they all read off. So I created like 3 different tools to help them do that. I don't know if anyone used the tools. I mean, maybe a few of them, and it's really, you notice it on TV when you put in something and it comes up right away and starts, it's playable, but they're rare to find. I also I was one of the few people that got Commodore to basically venture capitalize a company of mine that was called American Multimedia. And this was to take CDTV and to use it for industrial purposes. Because it's a nice compact machine, low maintenance, put a monitor on top of it. You could have industrial training, essentially. And it seemed like a good market. We did a number of examples and demos and things to try to convince people to do it, but it was still too far ahead of time. These people are still doing dial-up modems and stuff like that. They just didn't understand it. So that market failed too. And along those lines, motion video is starting to come in. My company created this really nice motion video editor, and what I really liked is if you hook the trackball up to your Amiga, because I came from TV, right? So I'd seen these TV systems that use these trackballs to be able to do nonlinear video editing. I thought, I wonder if you could do that on Amiga. Well, actually, yeah, you can do that. You can do it really well. So I created essentially a motion video editor. We called it Bay. And then we found someone that wanted to buy it. And it was Macro System Germany that wanted to buy it, because they got into this big time. And they had this Draco box and all these other things. I think they're still doing it. I'm not sure whether video editing is still their thing or not. But what was funny about it is I really got to know Jörg Strabo really well, and built the product, gave it to him, didn't hear anything else. There was no where's my check for all the development? Didn't happen. And then 5 years later, he gives me a call. You probably heard it. He said, hey, I've been massively successful with this video editor. I owe you something. What I promised in the contract, so he finally paid me, and I was very happy that I hadn't, misjudged him just late. So what's the final thing then? So there's this Viscorp Ed. So again, Don Gilbert comes to me. And he says, hey, Viscorp has got this great idea for a device. And actually it was a cool idea. You connect it to your TV, you connect it to your antenna. And it will decode the TV. It's then genlocked, with graphics, and then remodulate it so it goes back into your TV antenna. And you can see all this stuff. And it's connected to a telephone plug, and you can go on the internet, and you can make telephone calls from your TV, and just all kinds of cool integration of television, internet, TV all together. And in addition, there was kind of a sales pitch for putting ads on your screen. So, this is something you see nowadays where in the corner of the screen pops up, get a discount or now 20% off, that kind of thing. A guy named Roger Remillard came up with all those concepts and he patented them. And that's what this company, Viscorp, was based off of, that idea that was going to be a huge success. And one of the neatest things about it is the front of this box, here's one of the boxes right here. This is actually a Viscorp Ed. I don't know if you've ever seen one before, this is it. And if we have a museum here, I would be willing to donate this. I don't like carrying it around anymore. It's like Dale. Okay. It's sold. To Dale. Thank you, Dale. So that's a cool idea, but I think it has some nasty problems because I wrote a really nasty letter toward the end of my employment there that became very popular. And everyone in the Amiga community was really not happy with Viscorp, as I recall, because it was supposed to get all the IP for Amiga. It was supposed to do great things, but it never happened. Which meant that the next in line, Gateway Computer, said, hey, there's a lot of patent property here, let's buy it. And so I flew down to talk to Ted Wade, and he was really excited to talk about it. And you went down too, right? Yeah? You? Okay. So he's like, what can I do with Amiga? He says, Ted Wade, billionaire at that point, runs Gateway Computer. Making massive numbers of computers. I said, well, it's got a lot of cool properties. And of course, the engineering team in there, it's like, yeah, but, it's not that great, blah, blah, blah. It's not a PC, it doesn't run DOS, all those kind of things. And so I said, well, okay, maybe it's just the IP that we're buying. But the funny thing came out of that, is when I went into his office to talk to him, he had stacks of paper on his desk that he was reading. And it was my Rebel manual, my Rebel language. So I created this language, Rebel, Relative Expression-Based Object Language. It was pretty cool, have a defined language. And he was reading all his documents, wondering, what are you going to do with this? And I said, well, I'm trying to do a startup company. He said, well, I'm putting together a company to do startup companies. And so that's how Rebel got funded. The first round was through Avalon Ventures, which was part of Gateway Computers, cash staff. And we actually, if you ever use Rebel or were part of that revolution, it was an amazing amount of cool stuff because you could write. It was really good at integrating the internet with code, much beyond anything like Python or any other of those types of language. It was, if you know JSON was Doug Crawford, and Doug Crawford loved Rebel. And I'd come down and visit him down here, and he'd say, you gotta make Rebel open source so we can put it into the browser. I said, I can't put it into the browser because it's IP, you know, I'm not gonna give the source code away, it's been too much of a project. He said, well, you gotta do it. I said, no, I can't. So he wrote JSON for object exchange. And Rebel is JSON on steroids. I mean, it can not only do data exchange, but it can do code, it can do algorithms, it can do abstract stuff. And all of that gets you layers above in terms of expressibility. So, for instance, when you write a GUI, you can actually say, you know, view, button, red, open, you know, code open, and run it. And a GUI will pop up, there'll be a red button there, and you can press it. And then you can also put the code for it right next to it in square brackets. And now all that just worked really well. You know, if you wanted to send an email with another line. So that was a cool project, but it wasn't paying the bills. And actually, it was 15 years ago, Dale. You realize that? 15 years ago, I come to this AmiWest. Dale brings Roku Pico, which was this cool little box that was basically a full computer on a box. You know, that was a Roku, you know, player. And it was so cool because it was like, Dale, you realize what we can do with this? This could be like the next Amiga or something. And he's like, well, you got to talk to Anthony. So I went and talked to Anthony, and he said, well, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I think I want to build one of those boxes. And did you ever consider like making open source or making open so people can like write their own programs for it? It's like, not really, but I don't know, maybe. So he said, would you be interested in making the lowest cost Roku possible so you can sell it in Walmart? I said, sure, let's work on that. So together, you know, he and I picked the chip, and you know, Anthony Wood and I picked the chip, and we got started on it. Very small development team, got out a year, and I went down, you know, within a year, and I bought it at the Walmart in a little town that I lived in up in Northern California. And I was like, this is cool. Get a next product, get it to the, you know, get it on the shelf for a year. So that was then 13 years, spent 13 years at Roku making all kinds of products. One of them was the stick, the Roku stick, which did a story how that came about, which was one of our big sales chains, a big store made electronic things. They said, you know, we don't want to add Roku to every TV, but it'd be nice to have just some little thing, a little module, you know, you can plug in the side. And I was thinking about, you know, Atari had those little modules with the little fingers, and just push it into the you know, the clip. And I said, yeah, that's cool. And so I wrote out a spec for what signals did we need to have on that little module to plug in there. Anyway, that evolved into the Roku streaming stick, and we patented it, and it was a big success. The people didn't want the little boxes in front of the TV, they wanted them all behind and whatever, you know. It was tricky in many ways because of the power. It's really difficult. HDMI connector, if you know well, there is power on it, but it's only like 50 milliamps, right? It's not enough to run a whole stick with Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. So there had to be an external, you know, connection for power. Yeah, so that was that. Let's see, develop products. Oh, so then I retired 2 years ago, and now back full circle, I decided, hey, you know, computer software has gotten there's so much gobbledygook, and C++ has gone off into outer space, and there's so much complexity in the world of writing software. I want to get back to something simpler and something that was more along those lines originally. So, started a TV production company, and I've got a TV series I'm working on. Written 5 episodes of it, going out, you know, trying to find producers to make it, and studios to make it, and do it. And that is a hard gig. It's worse than the venture capital circus. because those people are all insiders. They're none of this open venture company. They're all like, no, you can't come talk to us. We don't be careful, man. That's because there's so many people that write, shows and scripts. They don't want to hear it. Anyway, so I've written that, but I've had some limited success in finding some people that are interested in doing it, see if the conditions go right and all that, and producers and things, and money sources, and then there's this whole AI thing that's happening right now in this whole industry that's really messing up a lot of it, because they're afraid it's going to take over, and it might, if it gets good enough, it might take over a lot of it. Can it really do it? We're not sure. Does it need a human element? All that kind of stuff. All right, so I think that's good. We need to get some water. Oh, I got some t-shirts, more t-shirts to give away. I can take questions too, if anyone's got any questions about any of this sort of the full art type idea. Let's see what I've got. All right. What year was this?
88.
We got it 88.
86.
85.
83.
Who said 86? I see that number. You got the inside track on that.
Hey, Carl.
All right.
That's a good one. A water just appeared.
What's that?
A water just appeared for you.
Oh, nice. Hear about the water? Where the water materialized from? Any other questions on things? A lot of people thought that the Amiga kernel came from something else. It came from Unix, or it came from some other university project, whatever. It did not. It was actually something I developed prior to coming to Amiga. I picked at HP. By developed, I mean I developed the concepts of it. I didn't develop the code. And then coming to Amiga, that offer that they gave me, you can do whatever you want. Come here and do whatever you want. And Jay Miner actually challenged at one point. He came to me and said, hey, here's Neri Atari, which is the book that's written about the Atari OS and how it worked, OS, the ROM of the Atari. And he said, maybe you should do something like this, because I don't think you really, bought into this whole, we're going to have this, multi-APIs and libraries and all that kind of stuff. And I said, I'll look at it, and I took it, and I considered it, but no, it had to be the way it had to be to really launch, all of what was built with the Amiga. It's just the right decision at the right time in history. Here's the Amiga logo. Does anyone want an Amiga logo? Yes. I got a lot of them. What year was it made?
89 or 90?
There you go, 88.
Yeah, 89 is correct. The copyright on this is 89.
Wow.
So it goes back here.
We'll get it.
Yeah, here it is.
Send it back to Ken.
And I'll sign any of this stuff you want later. If you want a signed version of it. I've got a lot of stuff, and I got to tell you, I need to find some of the archives things. I keep carrying these boxes to these shows, and then I carry it all back home. And it's like, no, it's going to go in the garbage one of these days, and it's going to be gone forever. And anyone here write
Put it in a picture for
any
you.
wrestlers in? Yeah? Oh. Oh. You might already have one of those, but there's another. Okay. All right.
That's awesome.
What year?
86.
Gotta be 86. Gotta be so much for sure.
Everything's 86.
Okay,
There you
Yeah. Yeah, developers conferences were good for all that kind of stuff. Here's exec.
Wow.
If anyone wants it.
Oh my goodness.
That's Marshall.
I'm back here. You want it? So this is the source code to exec as of version 23. It's annotated, signed by me, so you know it's official. Has the dates on it. It's the entire source code, and I actually wrote really well documented source code. Yeah, this is a work of art. So I'm glad you're interested in it. Thanks. Yeah.
You need to scan that.
I got another one.
That should go to the computer museum.
What's that?
That should go to the computer
Museum. Yeah. Yeah. That's why he's a good choice. Right.
guys, that answers my question. I had a question for you, was like, do you have any source code of historic interest that would be good to very good content? You did.
Yeah, I've got one more of those. So I've given one of those way before, because we didn't print very often. We didn't have a great printer or anything like that.
Let the club exhibit it every year for AmiWest. We'll take care of it.
Okay, that's awesome, yeah. Okay, Brewers guys, anyone? Yeah. Well, I guess we're over, come on together.
I got you, Chris. I got you.
The ads documentation that you showed, you see a huge amount of like community cooperation. Thank you. You reached out to a lot of companies like
You got that? How'd you get that? You just take one?
contacts from the
He's giving you away?
ecosystem.
You have to talk to him.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't letting people.
Yeah, well, it was through really this kind of
Oh, you do?
people that want to be part of it. Discord also-
Look what we got, guys. Check it out. We got Carl's book. We all scored one. Pretty awesome. Here, I'll move us in a little bit. Sorry, guys. I was out doing my booth, so we didn't do too much, anything too exciting. And there's Mr. Bill. It's Bill's birthday today, so awesome to have him here with us.
There's an Apple t-shirt over there.
Yeah, you spotted.
Thank you.
That's let's see, that would be 1986. That's 1986. That's what that was when we introduced that Apple. That Apple was perfect. You want the blue one?
I want to know what
I want this one.
No, I did not, but I met him about 3 different times in the early 90s after he had gone off.
Yeah.
Well, even though he was there.
Very tested that.
Some really cool stuff.
It was Xerox Park. That's where it came from. And we had a big team from Xerox Park at the time. Yeah. Okay, so we done? It's 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Can I add this to my collection?
Yeah, you got anyone who has a collection wants any of these t-shirts. If you're a CDTV or I got CDTV.
Oh, yeah. Let me get one of those, man. Can I get one of those too?
Yeah, take it.
Sweet. Thank you.
These are newer. These are not so old. These are not 40 years old. These are from, I think, 10 years ago. History of Amiga.
Thanks, Carl.
This is a good one to put on the wall.
Oh, yeah. Throw that to me.
Who wants it?
Going and
Give me
beyond.
several already. Anyone else need a second developer conference t-shirt? Okay, it's sold.
It'll be on the Boing and Beyond next episode. I'll trade you shirts. How about that? All right, I'll trade you a shirt. What size are you? Extra large? All right, let's grab my extra large shirt. We'll do a trade real quick. We'll do a trade.
Okay, yeah, that was, yeah.
All right, let's go over here. We'll grab one of these guys. I know you can't see me, but you can hear me. So we're going to do a t-shirt trade real quick. So let's do a t-shirt trade.
Milan. You look for Milan? Right, okay.
A little trade action. All right, here you go, Carl. This is one of our Boing and Beyond episode shirts. On the back it says this on the back here, Amiga Ambassador. Since we're all Amiga Ambassadors, so thank you. All right.
Everyone's got a Brews guy.
All right, we did a trader. The talk is over, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll have it up here. Looking about an hour, so should be for a great meeting. Dale's coming in.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.